Hey, what's up everyone? Morey Croson here, and today we're going to be breaking down the women's 100-meter final from the World Championships, and we're going to start the video right now. This is the newest edition of the Performance Lab.
Reach your individual goals. You don't want to just talk about straight line speed. We also want to talk about your ability to be quick. We break down your video. Let's make you into the quarterback I know you can become.
All right, so this was a great race. We got a lot of great angles here to be able to take a look at, to be able to break down. And, big news, obviously, is Shelly and Fraser Pryce winning her 5th 100-meter world championship, which is amazing. She won her first one in 2013 and then won this one here in 2022. So really has been one of the top sprinters for the last 9 years. It has been a consistent top competitor, so huge congratulations to her. Another big thing, Shericka Jackson came in second, beating the Olympic champion Elaine Thompson. We all know Elaine Thompson's been going through some injury things this year, so it's been a little bit difficult for her since she won that world championship. And before we hop in the video, if you like the information or have been on this channel before and would like to learn more about track and field, how these people are or how these athletes are achieving such great overall performances, and also want to improve your speed, then go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell. We'll do a lot of things to be able to help you in just getting more content and more information about track and field. And so we're going to go ahead and hop right into it. And there's really a lot of different things that we can talk about here. Dina Asher-Smith ended up going and winning a national record. Melissa Jefferson, who was the U.S. Champion, ended up coming in last place in this, which was definitely not what she had in mind going into it. So yeah, we'll go ahead and go into the video here. So looking at the front, I mean, we just love to see the start from all of these women. I mean, we can only from this view only see 4 of them, and we'll be able to get the side view as well, which will be good. But when we look to see that front view, I'm always big on seeing when does that first foot hit and how fast does that first foot hit. And we can see, and this is something that we also see in Christian Coleman, where he's able to get that front foot down so quickly and still be able to stay very loaded into that hip. Like we could see, I mean, Shericka Jackson obviously is loaded into the hip as well, but she's a lot taller, right? I mean, she's a lot taller of an athlete, but because of that, that also makes it so it's a little bit more difficult to load the hip the same way as when you are a little bit shorter. That's why the shorter athletes end up having a definite advantage when it comes to being able to run these shorter races, or even out of the start, they end up having more of an advantage. So the 100 meters is very, very interesting because that advantage of being taller doesn't carry over as well. It's like really hard to run the 400 meter and be, like a Shelly and Fraser Pryce height, right? Basically impossible for her to be able to really compete at the national level for like a 400 meter. But when you get down into the 100 meter, it's right at that length where that great start that she has can end up offsetting the any type of advantage that you get from being taller in the by having that race just be a little bit shorter overall. So with that said, we'll take a look at some of the start. You can see she does such a great job of just hitting the ground and being able to transition off, right? This is her second step, and she's off the ground with that second step basically before everybody. I guess Elaine Thompson does a good job also being able to get the foot off the ground pretty quickly as well. And I love the position here that Talu is actually landing in overall, and you can tell she's doing a great job out of the start. She had a fairly good start. Didn't end up having a great race overall, but definitely got out well in comparison to like Shelly and Fraser Pryce. I mean, Shericka Jackson, she was right in line with all of them there. And as we get going into the top speed, you can see that she just did a great job of being able to transfer through into a drive phase. I mean, Shelly and Fraser Pryce, she's just so smooth. Look at she barely even moves from the beginning into her top speed. Like her drive phase and her top speed are basically the same, which is just phenomenal, right? Look at how well she does, or how good of a job she does being able to get extension and being able to pull through. She does end up having that little bit of kind of turnout that we've talked about before on that left leg. And the big reason that I say that doesn't end up being great is because it kind of limits how much force we're able to generate into the ground, right? If the foot's turning out, as we're pulling back, then that's going to make it so we're not able to activate within those hamstrings near as well. So, getting that foot through and being able to pull that foot back underneath ends up being really, really important. And then being able to then extend out with those legs. And we'll get an idea foot contact wise where we're at. This is very, very slow motion. So these aren't going to be accurate. We've already talked about a lot of those foot contact times in terms of the importance of them. And where they're at in some of these past breakdowns. So we know that they're definitely in like a 0.08 time period overall, but this is going to be in slower motion, which I think is going to be helpful in being able to get a little bit more accurate in some of the information. Actually, it's not slow motion yet. It's still pretty fast paced. There we go. Now we slow down. You can kind of see the difference there. Okay, hit there at 2.7, and then transitioned off around 5.0. And we'll see the difference between left to right. Okay, she hit there at 0.9. Both of them, she does a great job being able to land very far forward overall within her feet, and then is about 0.14 on that one. So pretty similar, pretty close to the same there. Let's take a look at Shericka Jackson as well. We're going to say she hit on the left here at 0.04 and transitioned off right about there, 3.4. Okay, so pretty long foot contact time for her. Go next one. Yeah, we got 7.4 for this. Okay, and then right at about 0.0, yeah, about 0.0 for on the right. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so we see that, right, Shelly and Fraser Pryce from one to the other, so she's at 0.24, 0.27. Okay, so she's a little bit longer on the right than on the left in terms of how much time she's spending on the ground, right? Oh, actually, sorry, this is 0.23. Yeah, so she's actually about the same. Okay, 0.23, 0.24, those are both really, really good. Now, when we look at Shericka Jackson, much more of a difference, right? We're looking at 0.26 in comparison to 0.30. Okay, so a little bit, I mean, definitely longer foot contact time as well, and that's going to be understandable because of how tall Shericka Jackson is, right? But what ends up being a big thing with Shelly and Fraser Pryce, and what makes her really unique and really good, is not only does she have very fast foot contact time, but she also does a great job of being able to pull those hips through. So as she's pushing off here, she immediately is able to generate or get those feet coming back forward, and she ends up having to have a little bit longer backside mechanics in general because she is a little bit shorter, right? So it's going to benefit somebody like Shericka Jackson to be able to come more right through with her legs, and it's going to be also a difference between men and women in terms of their pelvis and how much movement you're going to be able to see within the pelvis. Men typically don't have as much flexibility. They're a lot more stiff, and so their backside mechanics are going to be a lot shorter than women's, while women are going to be able to be a lot shorter with their foot contact time in general, just because of the weight distribution and things like that. So there's some differences between men and women. We can see that both of them are pretty long within their backside mechanics, but Shericka Jackson does a better job of being able to, if we look at like the angle at push off here, she does a pretty good job of maintaining a good angle within that hip, where we could see with Shelly and Fraser Pryce, when she's coming off, it's closer to 130, 135, somewhere in there. So the more upright or the taller athlete's going to benefit more from having a angle within that back leg that's not as long back behind, where the shorter athlete's going to benefit more from being able to get further back with that foot, just because they're going to be able to utilize more of that horizontal force moving forward. Okay, so you have to be able to be very, very strong with your foot contact, right? And that's where, like, she's very, and basically all the athletes that are shorter that succeeded at a top level or a high level, Onyala comes to mind, Christian Coleman comes to mind. They're very, very strong within their lower body, right? You could really tell how strong they are, and she's one of them for sure. I mean, she's very, very strong in her lower body, has big glutes, has big upper legs there, and it's important because as she's hitting the ground, she's creating a ton of pullback with her legs there to make it so then when she hits the ground, she could generate a lot of force, not only upwards, but mostly forwards here to really maximize that horizontal force production. We see in the numbers that the vertical force production a lot of times is very, very similar within novice athletes and top athletes when it comes to sprinting, but where the true differentiation happens is the ability to generate more horizontal force, and especially for women that again are a little bit more undersized, you have to be great at being able to generate a great horizontal force. And that's where somebody like Melissa Jefferson can get a lot better, is as she continues to get older and as she continues to be able to improve her lower body strength, she'll be able to generate more horizontal force and be able to land a little bit more effectively within her in her landing, right? And so there's a lot of great things to be able to see off of that. And then we'll also look at the start here again. So foot landing, this is a great job of being able to land with that leg, and really, could probably do a better job of being able to absorb through the hip. Doesn't do a bad job of absorbing through the hip, but you could tell, it's not really necessarily focused. We're looking at Shelly Fraser Pryce, not necessarily focused at being able to load in the hip here, and it's landing a little bit flat-footed. So she lands pretty far back and then just transitions right forward into her next step, and that's an interesting way to be able to land. I guess that ends up being a lot about stability, a lot about flexibility too, right? So she's how she's landing right here, like leg is basically straight, her foot is very, the weight distribution is very much more in like the middle of the foot instead of like the front part of the foot. So if we see like Talu here, she's landing a lot more on the front part of her foot. See how her weight is, or her heel is a lot higher up, right, than Shelly Fraser Pryce. Okay, so she's going to be trying to land and get that heel a little bit higher up. A lot of, that's one of the things that I see with the men in particular. Like, they do a great job being able to keep that heel really, really high. We'll see a little bit earlier on. Boom. Yeah, so being able to keep that heel really high. Trayvon Bromell is a guy that does it very well. The second step by Talu wasn't great by any means. She's turned out, way too much rotation. I like this step though. That third step's really, really good step. Was able to land and control really, really well. The third step for Shelly Fraser Pryce is very similar. And yeah, by the time she gets, what makes Shelly Fraser Pryce unique is that she gets really into her drive phase, into that fifth step. And that's a great fifth step right there. Look at how straight that leg is when it's hitting the ground, and the position where it's hitting the ground, and she's able to transition off so quickly for it being so early on into the race, and for her leg being so straight, right? A lot of times when we start to see people, they get this straight within their fifth to seventh step, what ends up happening is that you end up having a lot longer foot contact time, because she's so much more in like the middle of the foot, but because she is very, very strong within the ankle, she's able to hit the ground here, absorb, and then transition off immediately. So she gets into really her top speed running form within 7 steps, which is super unique. You don't even see that on the men's side at all, period. And so that's where she's able to be one of the top sprinters and run with the taller women, is she's just able to get into a very, very high speed very early, and that's what makes it so she's able to separate here, right? So it's kind of similar to, fast forward too fast. It's kind of similar to like what we saw with Marvin Bracey yesterday with when he was beating Fred Curley, right? He gets out in front, right? And then here she's just staying nice and controlled and composed with her body position, and now she can really get into her top speed. And this is when she starts to separate, right? Because now all her horizontal forces are being optimized, right? Now when she starts to separate, that gives her that bit of a lead. And then here at the end, we see Shericka Jackson. Now she's getting more into her top speed, and now she's closing. We'll see Elaine Thompson close on her in the past, but it just was not enough to be able to take out Shelly Fraser Pryce. So Shelly Fraser Pryce was getting more into her top speed, like right around here, and got to be able to separate. Boom, this is when she's at her top speed. Now she's just trying to hold it best she can. This is where now Shericka Jackson's getting into her top speed, and she's closing. And really, if she was able to maybe maintain more of her form here, instead of like push, just focus on or let kind of the race come to her. Like, see that arm movement there? Like, that wasn't a great action. She was a lot more controlled in her arm swings here, and this is when she started to catch her, and then she started to change up her arms and get herself ready to extend, whatever the case may be, and it kind of slowed her up, so she wasn't able to make that same progress on Shelly and Fraser Pryce, and maybe she could have, pushed it. She only lost by 600ths of a second, so she could have maintained that mechanics for a little bit longer. Could have made a big difference. But give us a thumbs up down below if you like the information. Subscribe to the channel. A lot of in-depth stuff here, like we talked about before. And this is what you're going to get within the program, right? You're going to get a lot of in-depth information to help you in understanding how you can run faster and be able to do it in a very short amount of time. Right, I'm big on, the reason I like doing these videos, and it helps me in being able to understand what is it that we're looking for when it comes to running, right? We can see that when we're looking at the finals, right, we're looking at the best women in the world, we're looking at the best men in the world, we're looking at the fastest people in the world. What are the fastest people in the world doing? And when you can slow it down to this degree too, it's so great to be able to see it like this, because it gives us a great ability to connect to how you can get the most amount of speed the fastest. And so, and really the big thing to me is getting a coach, right? Like, I have a coach that helps me with my business, and you should have a coach to help you with your sprints. If you're serious about running faster, right, you want to have somebody that's going to look into your biomechanics and your mechanics and understand all the small little details. And this is something that I think in sprinting is really missing, right? This is something that's really big. And another thing that I do, quarterbacks, right, being able to look at the particulars within the mechanics and how you can throw the ball further. Within that, I also, am able to utilize a lot of the same type of information that I use within the sprinting mechanics, in that I'm looking at very, very small details, right? And that's what separates me from quarterback coaches, and that's also what separates me from sprinting coaches, is really being able to isolate the details. I don't get too caught up in how many times you should be running per week, or what should be your programming, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of variables that come into play there depending on what it is you're trying to do, your background, how strong you are, how plyometric you are, what are some of the injuries, blah, 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 all the things that go through there. What's important is how do you go through the sprint, and being able to maximize that is to me the #1 priority, and that's what we put a focus on within our program. So check those out down below. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, leave those in the comments down below. And also, you can leave me a comment or send me an email if you have any specific questions about how you can get faster. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.